Like with previous sets, I will show you the 10 most interesting commander concepts from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. We usually look at other cards too, but this time there were just too many interesting legendaries. So today I'll show you 10 concepts and commanders to lead them. Let me know which one your favorite is, because there are a lot. The first one is one that really deserves the amount of attention she is getting. This one lets you get multiple upkeeps whenever she deals damage to a player. The amount of damage you do with Obeka is equal to the amount of upkeeps you will get later. So any card that will let you do something on your upkeep, like for example Shieldred the Whispering One, who lets you return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield every upkeep, is very strong with Obeka. This time you would get, for example, without any extra power on the Splitter of Seconds, you would get 2 creature cards back from your graveyard to the battlefield. And that is really strong. You will also need a way to get in, so cards like Whisper Silk's Cloak will let you get in with Obeka because she can't be blocked, and will have Shroud, which you will need because your opponents will want to destroy this creature. Next up is Kellan the Kid. I think this one is underappreciated. It's a green, white and blue commander, so 3 colors already, and while it is a card that is loved, the flavor is really cool too, because some people have complained that there is no adventure on Kellan the Kid, but he works really well with them. So I will play Kellan like an adventure commander. He says, whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, for example from exile, which you do with adventures, you may cast a permanent spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. This means that you can really storm off with Kellan the Kid, and you will easily get to 5 mana before the kid gets destroyed. Kellan also works really well with his previous cards like Kellan Inquisitive Prodigy, that's a 4 mana 3/4, but also has an adventure, so you can cast him from exile as well. Other adventures that are really good are ones that are very cheap to play as exiled creature or as exiled cards, because then you can make sure that you get a lot of lands onto the battlefield, and that is why I also would like really expensive cards in this deck, like Virtue of Strength, which is a 7 mana enchantment that lets you produce 3 times the amount of mana that you would normally do with basic lands. Next up, my personal favorite is Lilah Undefeated Slickshot, a 3 mana commander with prowess that also says, whenever you cast a multicolored instant or sorcery spell from your hand, exile the spell instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, it becomes blooded. So basically doubling all the double colored instants or sorcery spells that you will play, because they will only be blue or red. This does mean that whenever you play them as a plotted card, you will only get 1, because the ability only works with spells from your hands, but doubling big spells like Magma Opus is still really strong. It's an 8 mana instant, in this example, that deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Then you tap 2 target permanents from your opponents, create a 4/4 and draw 2 cards. But then you can do that on a later turn as well without even paying the mana cost, because you can play it plotted later too. Another perfect example of a card that is really good when you plot it is Galvanic Iteration. It's a 2 mana instant that lets you double an instant or sorcery spell. Of course, you will already want to be wanting to do that. And what is great about a card like this is that when you can play it for free, you will have way more mana open to cast a really big spell that you can then double very easily with Galvanic Iteration. Geralf the Fleshwright seems like a normal zombie commander, but this is really a storm commander, which it also seems like because of the thunder striking in the background. This card says whenever you cast a spell during your turn other than your first spell that turn, so you already will need to storm off a little bit, you create a 2/2 black and blue zombie rogue creature token. Most importantly, a 2/2 zombie. Whenever a zombie enters the battlefield is the second ability, put a +1 counter on it for each other zombie that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. That means that whenever you get your next commander onto the battlefield, it will get an extra +1 counter on top of the ones the previous one got. So you will keep improving upon your battle tactics, if Geralf would say it. Cool cards with it are, for example, Hordewing Scab, which is a 5 mana zombie that also counts as a zombie entering the battlefield, of course, but also gives your other zombies flying, and then you can draw and discard whenever they deal damage. So that is a really strong card because your big zombies can get in with the evasion they get. And then there's a card like Red Storm, which is a 4 mana card that says whenever you cast a spell, copy it for each spell cast before this turn, which really helps with the fact that you are storming off. This one proliferates, so you can put a lot more +1 counters on all of your zombies that got +1 counters before. So that's a really strong way to make your strong zombies even stronger. If you want to laugh during your commander games, Jesper Flint is a great commander for you. A 3 mana card that lets you steal cards from your opponents. And this is an exponential effect because creatures you control but don't own, so anyone that you steal, are mercenaries in addition to their other types. Laughing Jesper Flint works with outlaws, and mercenaries are outlaws. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards, where X is the number of outlaws you control, and you exile not from your own library but from your opponent's libraries, so you can keep stealing more cards from them. Then until end of turn you may cast the spells from among those and pay mana from any color to cast those cards. So you keep stealing your opponent's cards, and that is reflected in the flavor as well by the shadows that you see in the background from Jesper Flint. So that is pretty metal. Talking about metal, we have Gonti, Lord of Luxury, a 4 mana card that lets you steal even more cards from your opponent, the top 4 cards, and you get to choose one of them, put it face down, and then you may cast it later. Or for example, Opposition Agent, who is also a rogue, like Gonti, with Flash, and that says that whenever you control your opponents while they are searching their libraries, so whenever they search their libraries, you get to search for them, and while an opponent is searching their library, they exile cards that they find, so that you find actually, and you may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. So you can at least catch one opponent off guard. And this stealing is very common among rogues and pirates, for example, who are all outlaws, so you get to exile even more cards from the top of your opponent's libraries and steal them all. It doesn't seem interesting to make treasure artifacts from your opponent's creatures, but Vraska the Silencer is a 3 mana commander that says when a non-token creature an opponent control dies, you may pay 1 to have it return under your control onto the battlefield, and it will become an artifact. Yes, it will become a treasure as well, but it will also keep its abilities. So any statics or any enter the battlefield effects will still happen. So anything that works really well with big artifacts, for example, that you will get to steal because you can really easily kill your opponent's creatures with Vraska as well, really work well. Panharmonicon, for example, says if an artifact enters the battlefield and it causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, you get to double it. Already a really strong card, of course, but this is just one example. And another really good card to kill your opponent's creatures with is, for example, Ram Through. Any fight spells that you use on Vraska will work extra because she has Death Touch and will kill the creatures she deals combat damage to. Next up is Breeches the Big Boom, or the Blastmaker as some like to call him. This is a 3 mana monkey, or as some people like to call him, a goblin, that says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, so you will need some cheaper spells, you may sacrifice an artifact, so you will need some artifacts, but then if you do, you may flip a coin, so you have a little bit of chance as well, but when you win the flip, copy the spell that you cast. So if that was a really big spell like Bress's Bounty, a 7 mana sorcery that says for each land you control you get a treasure, which are also artifacts, you get to copy the spell. But when you lose the flip, Breeches the Blastmaker deals damage equal to the spell's mana value to any target. This means that you can deal 7 damage to any target, and we like that as well. Other great cards that work well here are 4 mana spells that let you discard, then draw a bunch and then create some treasure, like Big Score, because that will give you treasure and will be one of the spells you cast for this turn. You will need to cast 2, and you will need to cast big spells, and you will also need small spells, and you will also need artifacts, and then you have a coin flip, but this chaotic deck will be very fun to play. I needed to read this card multiple times to see that it was really good. Taii Wakeen Perfect Shot is a 2 mana 2/3 commander as well that says whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to a creature equal to the creature's toughness, you draw a card. And I thought, well, when are you going to get a spell that deals exactly that amount of damage? Well, if you work with all spells that deal just a few points of damage to all of your opponent's creatures, then that will happen pretty often. Cards like Tectonic Hazard, that's a 1 mana sorcery that deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature they control, will help you out a lot, especially with the second skill of Taii Wakeen, which is to pay X and say if a source you control will deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player this turn, it deals that much damage plus X. So you can get all of your mana into that ability and increase all of the damage you do with your spells. That means that you will draw a bunch of cards and you will also deal a lot of damage, and we love that. If you don't want to die immediately because your opponents are scared of all the damage you are doing, then you can play a card like Heartflame Duelist. The creature part of it says instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and as you will be dealing tons of damage, you will get a tons of life back as well. I will stop saying as well right now, and this is an aura I enchant upon myself. Eriette the Beguiler works with these auras, and she says, or he says, I don't really know. Whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that aura's mana value, you gain control of the permanent as long as the aura is attached. Your opponents can of course remove the aura, but then you just lose an aura and not really a creature, right? Basically. Cards that are, for example, really good are cards like that get you new auras. So for example, Songbird's Blessing is a 4 mana one that says whenever enchanted creature attacks, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a new aura and you may put it onto the battlefield. Then you can perhaps steal another creature from your opponent or improve the amount of auras that are on the creature you are already controlling from them. Eriette's previous iteration also works really well. This was well, not as well. A 3 mana legendary creature that says each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. So this is an extra effect that works almost like the Beguiler card, because this says they can't attack you, they aren't really under your control. So it's a little bit double, but we love double effects in Commander, so you will need this card in your deck as well. That aura wasn't strong enough for me, apparently. Kaervek the Punisher is up next. Whenever you commit a crime, because I do need to add a crime card here, exile up to 1 target black card from your graveyard and copy it. You may cast a copy, and if you do, you lose 2 life. So getting things back from your graveyard. Good things here are things that mill, like Stitcher's Supplier, a 1 mana card that I love in Commander decks. It says whenever it enters or dies, put a mill 3, basically. Then there is Shieldred, the Whispering one, which is a 7 mana card that you would love to get back, and that helps you get more creatures back, so that really works well in this deck. It's a 7 mana 6/6 that says at the beginning of your upkeep you return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and that's basically all we care about, right? No, because your opponents also get to sacrifice their cards. And something tells me that we will see a little bit more about that card in the future too. In any case, let me know what Commander cards you really loved that aren't Shieldred. Let me know what your favorite cards from this set are, and perhaps we can build decks around them as well. Have a nice day and thank you for watching.